Everyone, I'm Mr. Cooper. I'm sure you have heard me before or even have me in class. I hope that it's only my students that are listening to this, and I hope it goes nowhere else except for NCPA. I am making you this video because I believe you should have this in your files to be able to listen to my little lecture on aggregate supply and what we call stickiness. Make sure you have on your computer the following fill-out note sheet. Much like with aggregate demand, this sheet allows you to kind of write the quick and easy stuff that deals with aggregate supply. These are the things that are most likely going to be on the AP test. And I also don't want to give you just another lecture that you're going to have to listen to and, well, maybe ask me hundreds of questions again about the same exact stuff. So I'm giving this to you so that you can have it at your disposal. Make sure you fill out these notes while we are going along. I'll try as hard as I can to make and reference these questions. So, what is a sticky wage? Well, a sticky wage is almost every wage that is happening in the world right now. Almost all people in the world make money when they go to a job. Obviously, you don't go to a job and not get paid. But when you go and get money, when you get paid, that is usually already decided as to how much money you are going to earn. That's what we call stickiness. We doubt that you are going to be able to change the amount of money you earn each month. It might take a while before you start to get a different wage. Almost everything in the economy is very sticky in a certain amount of time. It's not able to change very easily. Almost all businesses, when they make a decision, they're stuck with that decision for a short amount of time, and they're unable to choose it. So La Barista, for example, they have chosen to purchase, let's say, 1,000 liters of milk. But then the next day, nobody wants any milk. Well, unfortunately, they're stuck with the milk. Regardless of what the consumer wants, they're stuck with what it is that they have already purchased for their business decision. They're sticky. That decision is sticky. So everything in the macroeconomy is going to be sticky, at least in the short run. So that's where we get into macroeconomics and time. In the macroeconomy, we have what we call short-run stuff and long-run stuff. In the short run, firms are going to be facing both what we call variable and fixed costs that they cannot control. NCPA has a very interesting fixed cost. We pay for this building every single year at around the same time, but we cannot change it until the next year. Once we have negotiated a price for this building, we pay the same exact price and it will not change. So in the short run, businesses are always having to think like, okay, what are our decisions? How much do we want to spend on something? Because once they make that decision, it's not going to change. They can't change it. They already have paid for labor, their costs, and how they're going to produce. And so in the short run, they don't have the full freedom to, say, change their prices or change how much they can produce because they've already made the decision. So that is what the short run is. The example that I want to give to you about this is myself. I am what's considered a short-run sticky wage. Dr. Cyrus pays me a salary each year, but we negotiate what that salary is going to be. Now, that cannot change during this school year. I am already paid the certain amount that we have promised each other. The board of NCPA has already budgeted for it. And so if I go to Dr. Cyrus saying, you need to pay me more money, unfortunately, they've already budgeted it out. They can't change that amount because in the short run, they've already chosen how much to pay me. Now, next year, or what we call the long run, maybe they're able to adjust. So the long run is where every firm is able to adjust to all costs and all factors of production. So that is kind of what the long run is right there. It's where everything is adjustable. Nothing is sticky in the long run at all because everything can adjust. My big example here is, again, let's take NCPA. Let's say tomorrow none of my students come into my class. In fact, no one comes to NCPA at all tomorrow. Well, while we would miss all of you, every single teacher here at NCPA is going to be paid irregardless of if you are here or not. Now, again, we'll miss you, but, please come to school. Please come to school. In the short run, we're still going to be paid. But in the long run, unfortunately, if we do not change the fact that we have no students, then we may not be paid next year at all, because no students equals no money. But we, as NCPA, are able to adjust this. We're able to have some time to go out and find new students and whatnot. And so in the short run, we're fine. In the long run, we have to adjust ourselves to this situation. So again, that was my example to you. Now, 5 here, how do we determine what sticky is? Well, the only thing you really need to know about this is everything in the short run. As long as you know what short run is, and as long as you know that everything cannot change very easily in the short run, that's how you determine what sticky is. Now, how do we determine what the SRAS is? This is a totally new term that you haven't looked at yet. So what's great here is it's our new supply curve, but our macroeconomic supply curve. The short-run aggregate supply shows us this short-run relationship where everything is sticky. It shows us also the relationship between production and price level. Much like a market supply curve, at higher prices, the short-run production decision may be to try to produce as much as you can, because at higher prices, you can make more money. At lower prices, you may not want to produce at as much as, let's say, at those higher prices. To be more specific, this is kind of what this curve looks like. It is just like the supply curve, and so, as you can see, on the left axis is almost price. It's really just the price level, as noted by this GDP deflator, or in other places, you can also use the consumer price index, as long as you have an index here. And on the bottom is the real GDP. So at lower price levels, you will have a lower amount of real GDP willing to be produced. And then at higher price levels, you will want to produce more, because businesses, they want to make as much money as they can. So, why is supply so sticky? I've kind of said this many, many times. Things cannot change in the short run. Here, you'll notice that you can't really determine what's sticky or not. The only thing you can know is that this upward sloping curve is a sticky supply curve. So the SRAS, or short run aggregate supply curve, is sticky in the short run. So, what happens to the SRAS when price level increases? Normally, producers will produce more, as determined by this graph right here. Higher price levels, more potential real GDP can be created. What happens to SRAS as price level decreases? Normally, sorry about that. Normally, producers will produce less. So, what shifts this curve? Much like the demand and supply curve and the aggregate demand curve that we learned about last time, there are some shifters to this curve. They are all 4 right here. I know it's a little boring me putting this on this sheet, but these are the 4 things that will cause a shift in SRAS. A change in input price, a change in nominal wages, a change in productivity of business, and a change in the expectations of inflation. Input prices equal to the fact that these are the products that you need to produce your goods and services. So for the iPhone, if you have an input price like the processor and that goes up in price, then unfortunately producers in the macro economy, not just Apple, may have to start charging more for all of their products. But this will actually shift the SRAS curve to the left. If input prices go down, SRAS shifts right. A change in nominal wages. Again, these are big, sticky things. So there can only be a change in nominal wage if something really big goes on. But these are the wages that are given to people as they work. If you have an increase in nominal wage, your SRAS curve shifts left. A decrease in nominal wage, SRAS curve shifts right. Productivity of business. If all businesses are able to do more, it shifts to the right, the SRAS curve. If productivity decreases, SRAS shifts left. And then last one, change in expectations of inflation. If people think inflation is going to happen, they're going to have to try and adjust as much as they can. But if there is an expectation of inflation, everyone's going to freak out. If there is going to be an increase in inflation, everyone has to try to raise their prices as quickly as they can to make ends meet. If it has a lower change in expectation of inflation, SRAS shifts to the right because now prices are going to be going down in the macroeconomy. People can kind of breathe a little bit, and producers are able to charge lower prices. So our last couple of questions here. What is the LRAS? So we talked about the short run aggregate supply, but now what about the long run aggregate supply? This is the long run aggregate supply curve. It is an upward sloping graph. It is an upward sloping curve, or a straight line, basically demonstrating that in the long run, everything is flexible. You'll notice here that regardless of that price level, long-run aggregate supply output, or real GDP, will always be the exact same, mainly because of the fact that everyone can adjust. It doesn't matter the price level. If inflation were to go down next year, we can kind of see it's like, okay, we need to start to adjust ourselves, and they have enough time to adjust. So the long-run aggregate supply curve is just the aggregate supply in the long run. It is a straight line because of the fact that in the long run, everyone can adjust, irregardless of what price level is happening at that time. What is YP? Well, I'm sure you noticed here at the bottom this potential output, or YP. Now, we don't know what is going to happen in the long run. We know that they will be able to adjust, and the only thing that we're able to really know is that there is a potential that they can create. This potential line right here is how much our economy can produce potentially. Much like the production possibilities curve, we are possibly able to produce at this level here. But we don't 100% know. We can just assume that this potential output is what we could be making in the long run. Now these curves do shift, and usually they shift to the right. It's very hard to shift to the left unless you have maybe a zombie outbreak or you have a lot of countries just going to war and whatnot. So YP is potential output. Now, I kind of said this one already. It's kind of equal to the production possibilities curve. As we learned in the first unit, that is how much you could be producing at a certain given time. The last one is for you to kind of see. On the AP test, this one in bold is usually the one they ask about. If you have capital or machines that last a long time, then you will be able to see a shift of the LRAS curve going to the right, thus meaning your potential GDP could be increasing. That is about it. I hope you guys learned a little bit. Please make sure you save this and listen to this whenever you need. And if you really need, you can always go listen to Mr. Clifford or look other stuff up on the internet as well. Thank you so much, and goodbye.